EV News, your number one resource for auto industry news and content. You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining me this morning on Inside Automotive. Today we're getting the latest update on New York's Advanced Clear Cars 2 mandate, also known as ACCII, and how dealers are faring in the state. Joining us now is Andy Guelcher, who's the president of Mohawk Chevrolet and chairman of the Chevrolet National Dealer Council. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Jim. Good to be here.
Yeah, well, before we get into how sales are at your store, and good to hear they're going well, but let's talk about this Advanced Clean Cars Act. What with 100% zero-emission vehicles by 2035, where does that stand today in the state?
So within the state, it's still on course. I think there's a lot of political uncertainty in what's going to happen and what Administrator Zeldin is going to be able to do with the EPA as it relates to CARB and then the affected states that are on the CARB mandate, with ACCII obviously being one of those. I think that the point that we're trying to drive home to the governor's office and to our fellow constituents who maybe are not so versed on this is that it's totally unreasonable. And I think that zero emissions is a laudable goal, absolutely. But the time frame on which they currently have it is setting us up for failure.
Yeah.
It's inorganic. You're forcing consumers to do something that they don't want to do, not in those numbers at least yet. So I think that there's a lot of conversations that have to be had to kind of slow this thing down.
Yeah, for sure. There's no question about it. They and everyone in the industry agrees, right? I mean, this, you're not alone on this. You're not on an island, but everybody, I don't care what state you live in, this has been a bone of contention with so many dealers and OEM executives, right?
Yeah, the consensus is certainly there, and it really doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on or where you're at on environmental, policies. It's what will ultimately the consumer allow, and what is the marketplace currently for EV sales. And when you're talking about states in New York specifically at 7 or 8%, and then wanting to go to 35 this year, it's just simply not possible.
Right. So what's the state? How are they responding to this?
So I would tell you that they've responded with quasi open arms. How about that?
Okay.
And they're open to conversations. I think there's a lot more at stake in their alignment with CARB and with Governor Newsom in California. And, we're talking to our constituents who run the new car advisory boards in California and the dealers in California too, who are very much in the same boat and very much on the same page as we are. So those are two big volume markets for all the OEMs. And this will ultimately have a large effect if it goes through. I think we're getting positive movement on it, Jim, but it still remains to be seen.
Yeah, interesting. Especially with with Trump in the White House, you would think this would be a much easier task to take care of, wouldn't you?
So this is definitely on the list, but I think as it relates to that, it's where on the list is this? And I think that there was some higher priority things beyond this when he first took office. So it's on there, and we know it's on there, but it's just when do they get to it? Yeah.
Could this drive consumers to buy out of state right now if things were to?
Absolutely. And that's one of the arguments we're making is, so I think one of the considerations, Jim, that wasn't made when they did this legislation is that digital retailing tools have been around for a decade or longer. So a consumer, just because they live within a certain proximity of a dealership, no longer means that they have to buy from that dealership.
Right.
You can buy online and ship it anywhere in the country. And I think that really wasn't given a lot of consideration. So it really, really could hurt volume numbers in the states that are affected.
Yeah, for sure. One big concern's been infrastructure. Have you seen any change in that area?
I think that there's been good investment in infrastructure. There's been good progress there, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. Again, you're going from 6 or 7 to 35%. So you're jumping 30 percentage points in sales. Number one, I don't believe that's ever been done with any ICE or EV or anything.
Right.
But also the current infrastructure is set up for that 6 to 7%. So going to a number like 30, 35%, that would put an unbelievable tax on that infrastructure, and it would just render it useless at that point.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So, hey, switching gears a little bit, and more challenges that dealers have to deal with, and that's the situation with tariffs. What kind of an impact is that having, if any, in your business today?
It's funny. Maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but I think it's pulling some consumers ahead.
Hmm.
And we're experiencing some really good first half of the month results in March here.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of dealers are seeing that. I've seen advertising campaigns that say buy now before the tariffs hit. So dealers are kind of keying in on this and going after it. And I think it's really helping drive sales.
Right, right. And of course, you got Trump on, he's basically set up a used car lot or a new car lot right there at the White House. And looks like he's selling Teslas now. So that's, he's in the car business more than we thought he was going to be.
Yeah, it appears he could use some help with some sales training techniques, but we can talk about that.
He first needs to learn how to say the word Tesla, right? Without an R. There's no R in there. So, yeah. But that's his New York accent, I suppose. But so business is going good. And you feel it might be driven by the tariffs, which is, like you said, counterintuitive, right? But
yeah, I mean, it is counterintuitive on the surface, but when you have a consumer who thinks that there likely could be a price increase of 20, 30, 40% in the next 60 or 90 days,
right,
that is going to put some fear into people, and it's going to pull the market ahead a little bit. I think as it relates to, really quick touching back on ACCII and the CARB mandates, our concern as dealers is that if they change the allocation system where we have to take more EVs, and we have less access to internal combustion vehicles, I think that would ultimately hurt us if this kind of volume train continues. But hopefully, again, that gets reconciled. But right now, things are looking pretty good.
What are your counterparts on the National Dealer Council talking about when you guys talk about EVs? And obviously, you've got the ear of Mary Barra and the others, the other leadership at GM and Chevrolet. What are you guys talking about? What's the number one point you want to drive home with Chevrolet with regard to EVs?
With regard to EVs, there's a few areas that General Motors and specifically Chevrolet got right, and it's building products that people want, right? So we have had real increases in market share over the past 6 months, which is really how long we've really been in the EV business. So that's you can see that, and that's a real thing. I think continuing to do that, but continuing to do that at a price point where it's affordable enough to drive actual volume is ultimately when this thing starts to take off, because the biggest barrier to EV market share is affordability. And we do not have, save the Equinox EV and what will be coming back, the Bolt EUV. Those will be in that $20,000, $30,000 range. Those are great price point vehicles. So regardless of powertrain, whether it's internal combustion or battery electric, you need vehicles in that price point to do volume in any market. So I think as we continue to work toward that, work on getting that Silverado down, the Blazer to come down a little bit. And as you know, those technologies, as we continue to build and get scale, that will naturally bring the cost down. So I think that's going to help drive EV sales organically when the customer will really, really start to take to it.
Sure. Have you heard from any customers yet that said, I was going to set out to buy a Tesla, but with all that's going on, because obviously Tesla sales are through the floor right now, right? Whether it be not just in the US, but around the globe. Have you had any customers say, I was going to buy a Tesla, but I'm done with that whole thing, and I'm buying a GM now, or I'm buying a domestic or another brand?
We've had more Rivian customers kind of defect to a Silverado EV product like that. We haven't had a lot of Tesla customers defect that I've heard of yet.
Yeah, that you've heard of. Yeah, and it looks like Scout is continuing its plans to sell directly to consumers, which threatens the franchise system a little bit. What's your take on that?
That's something that we're going to have to carefully evaluate and continue to fight that battle with them. I know NADA has taken that on full force.
Yeah.
And the ACCIEs are also heavily involved in that, and that could really be a problem. And I think that, we've gone down this road many times before, and once they fail there, generally, they see the value of a dealer network as it relates to permeating markets and getting real market share and long-term customer retention. I mean, Jim, BYD is starting to set up a dealer network. Come on.
Yep.
So you've seen this time and time again, and this is a model that has proven itself in so many different ways. And I think that, they go down this road under the guise of cost savings and not having the network and all the development people that are required to do it. And then it just never takes off. They don't get the market share they want. They don't have the customer support pieces that they wanted. And it always goes back to the strength of the dealer network. And I think that that's the point we need to continue to drive home.
I agree. Andy Guelcher, president of Mohawk Chevrolet, chairman of the Chevrolet National Dealer Council, fighting the good fight for you Chevy dealers every day. So he's also a member of the GM Dealer Executive Board. Look at you. You got Mary Barr's, ear every day. So I don't
know if I ever hear. I got a lot of cool titles. That doesn't mean much, but
well,
yeah, so far good.
That's pretty cool. So any dealers out there that are unhappy, here's the guy to call. We'll have to edit that part out,
right?
Number
up, Jim. Put my number up on the screen.
And here's his cell number, right? So Andy, thanks so much. Really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.